Cold hits your face before your eyes even open. Frost clings to the shutters. Somewhere below, a rooster hasn't even started crowing yet, but you're already awake. Stone walls hold the chill of night long after dawn arrives, and your breath fogs faintly in the dark room. You are a knight in 14th century England, sworn to a lord, bound by solemn oath, and today begins like every other day, in darkness. You swing your legs off the straw mattress. The stone floor is freezing under your bare feet. Do you have time to feel it? Not really. A bell tolls from the chapel below, calling the household to morning prayer, and a knight who skips mass is a knight who invites gossip. You pull on a linen shirt and hose, splash water on your face from a basin, and head down the spiral stairs before the second bell finishes ringing. The chapel is small and dim, lit by a handful of candles. You kneel on cold stone beside the other household knights, the chaplain's Latin washing over you in a low murmur. This isn't just piety, it's identity. The medieval historian Maurice Keene, who spent decades studying the code of chivalry, argued that knighthood was never just a military rank. It was a moral performance, watched constantly, judged constantly. You pray for courage. You pray quietly that today isn't the day you fail someone. Around you, older knights mutter the responses from memory, their faces unreadable in the candlelight, and you wonder how many mornings it takes before prayer becomes routine instead of need. Back in your chamber, your squire is already waiting. He's 15, maybe 16, and one day he hopes to stand where you stand. Dressing for the day isn't quick. First comes the arming doublet, a padded linen garment that cushions your body under the metal. Then the mail, thousands of interlocking iron rings, sewn or riveted into a shirt so heavy your shoulders remember it long after you take it off. Over that, if today calls for it, go pieces of plate, greaves for your shins, vambraces for your forearms, a breastplate strapped tight across your chest. Each piece has its own strap, its own buckle, its own small point of failure if fastened wrong. Your squire works fast, buckle after buckle, because a knight who can't move freely is a knight who dies freely. Why does any of this weigh so much? Because it has to. A full harness of mail and plate can weigh as much as a grown man's worth of extra burden, distributed carefully enough across the body that a trained knight can still run, climb, and mount a horse without help, though it takes years to move naturally under that much weight. Historian Ruth Mars Ocaras, who studies how medieval men were trained into knighthood from childhood, points out that boys began this apprenticeship as pages around age 7, learning to carry weight, learning to endure, long before they ever swung a sword in earnest. Breakfast is simple. Bread, maybe cheese, watered ale, because the water itself isn't always safe to drink. You eat standing, half armored already, half your mind on the training yard outside. The yard is where the real day begins. A quintin stands in the center, a rotating wooden dummy with a shield on one arm and a sandbag on the other. Miss your strike, ride past too slow, and that sandbag swings around and knocks you flat off your horse in front of everyone. It's humiliating. It's also exactly the point. You take up your lance and charge it a dozen times, feeling the impact shudder up through your shoulder each time you connect. Sword drills come next, practiced against another knight with blunted blades, footwork mattering just as much as strength. Sweat soaks through the padding under your mail despite the cold morning air. Your arms burn. Do knights ever get used to this pain? Some say yes, most just learn to hide it better. The master at arms watches from the edge of the yard, calling out corrections, occasionally stepping in to reposition someone's grip or stance with a firm hand and no patience for excuses. You've been training like this since you were 7 years old, first as a page fetching gear and watching from the sidelines, then as a squire actually swinging the blade, and now, finally, as a knight who's supposed to make it look effortless. Your horse deserves attention too, and not just any horse, your destrier, a specially bred warhorse trained to charge into chaos without bolting. He's worth more than most of the land around this castle, and you know it every time you check his legs for swelling, run a hand along his flank, make sure the farrier's shoes are holding. A knight without a sound horse is just a man in very heavy clothes. You feed him by hand sometimes, more out of habit than necessity, and the stable boys have learned not to approach him without you nearby. Destriers are bred for aggression as much as speed, trained to bite and kick in the chaos of a charge, which makes them magnificent in battle and occasionally terrifying in the stable. By mid-morning, duty pulls you elsewhere. Maybe it's a patrol along the Lord's boundary lines, checking for poachers or disputes between tenants. Maybe it's escorting a messenger through a stretch of road known for bandits. Land wasn't just soil in this world, it was the entire reason you exist as a knight, granted to you in exchange for exactly this kind of service. You ride out with a squire and one or two other men, eyes scanning the tree line out of habit more than fear. Nothing happens today. Most days, nothing happens. But you ride prepared anyway, because the one day you don't is the day it matters. The countryside rolling past is a patchwork of strip fields worked by tenant farmers, smoke rising from cottage chimneys, all of it technically under your lord's protection and by extension yours. A boy waves at you from a fence line. Do these people see you as a protector or just another armed man passing through? Probably both, depending on the year. Midday meal comes in the great hall, though meal undersells it. Trestle tables, servants moving with trays of pottage, salted meat and coarse bread. Seating here isn't random, it's a map of power, with the lord at the high table and everyone else arranged by rank below him. You sit where your status says you sit, no higher, no lower. Conversation turns to a tournament being planned for next season, and something in your chest tightens with anticipation. Tournaments aren't just games. They're where reputations get built, where a poor knight can win a rich ransom off a wealthier opponent, where the watching crowd decides who you really are. You've heard stories of knights who fought in dozens of tournaments across France and the Low Countries, earning more from captured horses and armor than most men earn from land in a lifetime. Is that you someday? You'd like to think so. The afternoon means more training, this time with the lance on horseback. Practicing the exact angle and grip that keeps a jousting spear from shattering your own wrist on impact. It looks graceful from a distance. Up close, it's controlled violence, repeated until your body doesn't have to think about it anymore. This training isn't without real risk. Archaeological excavations at the Toten battlefield site, where over 24 skeletons from a brutal 1461 battle were studied by researchers including Christopher Nussel, revealed the kind of catastrophic skull and limb trauma that combat, even practiced combat, could inflict. Every strike you take today is training your body to survive strikes that one day might not be practice at all. You've seen men carried off this very field with broken fingers, cracked ribs, once even a shattered jaw from a lance that struck wrong. Nobody complains. Complaining is for men who chose the wrong profession. Later, you're called to the Lord's side for something less glamorous, hearing a dispute between two tenant farmers over a boundary stone that's mysteriously moved 6 feet in the night. As a knight holding land, you're not just muscle, you're a minor judge, an administrator, a man whose word carries legal weight in disputes like this. You listen to both sides, inspect the field yourself, and rule in favor of the farmer whose account matches the old survey markers. Is this the part of knighthood the stories leave out? Almost always. Nobody writes songs about boundary stones. But this, too, is what the oath means, not just charging into battle, but standing in a muddy field settling an argument that matters enormously to the two men in front of you, even if it means nothing to anyone else. As daylight fades, the household gathers again for the evening feast, a longer, louder affair than midday. Musicians play in the corner. Wine flows more freely than the watered ale from breakfast. The Lord tells a story about a campaign from decades ago, and the younger knights lean in, half believing every exaggerated detail. You laugh along, tired in that deep, satisfied way that comes from a day spent testing your body against its limits. Your squire eats at a lower table, watching everything, absorbing the unspoken rules of a world he's still learning to enter. Roasted meat comes out for the high table tonight, a small luxury compared to the pottage of midday, and for an hour the exhaustion in your shoulders almost feels worth it. Someone brings out a lute, and a few of the younger squires start clapping along badly out of time, earning laughter from the older men who remember being just as clumsy once. By the time you climb back to your chamber, the candles are burning low. Your squire helps strip away the mail, the padding, the layers that made you feel invincible in the yard and vulnerable to remove. Your arms ache, your knuckles are raw, you kneel briefly for a final prayer, the same quiet request as morning courage and the strength not to fail anyone tomorrow. The chapel bell has long gone silent, the feast hall below has gone quiet, and the only sound left is the wind testing the shutters. Then you lie down on the same straw mattress, in the same cold chamber, and the frost creeps back toward the shutters as your eyes finally close. Tomorrow, the bell will ring again before the rooster crows, and you'll rise once more into the cold, becoming a night all over again.